Pales.
And I'm Pam Morgan, and we're with Remax Allegiance.
Welcome to Coffee Talk. This is an event that we do periodically to discuss with professionals in the market things that you might be able to do to enhance your sale of your home or the purchase of a new home. And we're really happy that you've been able to join us today.
So today we are talking about staging, and we have Kristin Rollins with us, and she is the owner of Staged in Style home staging business. And Kristin, thanks for coming. We're so glad to have you.
Thanks for having me.
So you've been staging about professionally, getting paid, as you say, for about 5 years.
About 5 years.
But all your life you've been...
Once a stager, always a stager.
There you go. So just to jump right in, I think the number one question that we have when we're talking to our sellers, our clients, do we really need a stage? Because the market's, the market might be really hot, and why in the world do we want to bother doing all of that?
We
So what do you think?
We do hear that sometimes, but we've kind of found that, it's kind of like anything else. The best dressed house is going to get the most looks. So if you have two homes for sale in a neighborhood, one is vacant and one is completely staged and looks beautiful, it not only helps the people picture their life when they walk in and kind of being able to scale the furniture, like, oh, look how this fits and look how this works in this room. It also tends to bring in more money. We've seen consistently over and over that the staged homes get the best offers.
Oh, that's great. And I find sometimes too when I'm going through a house with buyers, some people are really good at picturing what it would look like with their furniture in it, or...
But most are not.
But most are not. And
right.
most are not visual that way. And so I think it does, even if you've got like an awkward room, that you're like, well, what do we do with this room? And you can kind of give, it doesn't have to be what they use it for, but a playroom or...
Exercise room?
Excellent, yeah.
So if somebody decides they want to stage their home, we encourage it obviously for the same reason that you do. What would you tell them about how to begin with this process of staging their home?
So we usually begin with a consult where we visit the home, we take a look at the space. We generally, if it's a vacant stage, we'll generally stage the main level and the primary bath. If it's an occupied stage, meaning that folks are going to be living there while it's on the market, then we'll make recommendations, things like painting or updating lighting or something like that. And then from the consult, if they need us to maybe bring in a couple of updated accent chairs or a new coffee table or maybe some greenery and some artwork, we kind of try to come alongside and do whatever you need.
Great. I think a lot of people always walk into a staged house, and none of us really, if we're being real, none of us typically live that way, but we all want to live that way. So that's what I want. I want to have everything in perfectly order and nothing on my counters. So you do consults. Can people can you do staging with their own furniture?
We can. We call that either a partial or an occupied stage. And what we'll do is, as part of the consult, when we come in, we'll say, let's minimize the following items, and maybe we'll bring in new upholstered dining chairs, or we'll bring in accent chairs, or a new coffee table, or we'll have them clear out all their artwork and just bring in one. Because part of the purpose of staging is to simplify, kind of what you were just saying, like a staged house is not a lived-in house.
Right.
So when we are trying to enhance the home and show it off to its full potential, we're trying to make it look big and open and clean.
Okay.
So we do a lot of minimizing, and then we can bring in a few items that just kind of look clean and minimal.
Okay.
So you already said, I think, that there are different types of staging you can do. You can do the minimal and the maximum. If somebody were going to do, they had a real tight budget, what would you recommend somebody with a really tight budget do? In general, I'm realizing that every home is different.
Sure. So if they want to get the most bang for their buck, we usually say fresh paint and staging are the top two, because fresh paint is the quickest and cheapest way to update your home and make it look different.
Exactly. Right.
And then staging helps the buyer to walk in and instantly feel like, I can picture my life here. Everything is where it needs to be.
Right.
And I think too, a lot of times when at least a home has been freshly painted, that's one less thing that the buyer's got to come in and immediately do. They can move right in, and if maybe there's a bathroom that they are not crazy about and they want to update it, but they can
But
at
it's
least
livable for
livable
now.
and they can
Mhm.
move their things in. And, right, that makes really good sense.
Lighting is another big one.
Mhm.
Lighting does not have to be expensive as people think.
Right.
We have a bunch of go-to lights that are, I mean, some of them are under $50.
Oh, wow.
That you
That's
can
amazing.
just, they're clean, they're simple, and updating lighting makes a huge difference.
Good. So Kristin, again, people are so concerned about money, obviously, when they're selling. And because the market is so good, people do worry about or wonder why they should spend the money. So can they spend like a little bit just to get your opinion, help them arrange the house? Is there a fee for that? And then, if they decide, well, yes, I want you to stage the main level of the house or whatever.
Sure.
How does your fee structure, how does the typical fee structure work?
So typically for a consult, that's going to be the least amount, and that is us coming out, walking the interior, the exterior, making all of the recommendations, and kind of keeping everyone on the same page with that. And that's just a couple of hundred. And then once we move into a partial stage or a vacant stage, that's when it gets up into more like 2 to 3,
Right.
depending
Thousand.
on bringing in vacant home.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So you help people get rid of things they don't need or want, and then give them guidance so that a home seller could literally do their own staging. If they had somebody like you
Absolutely.
come in,
Sure.
Yeah.
walk through the house, give them tips, and then they could proceed on their own if they chose to do that.
And we have discovered that when people listen to us and they do the paint and they do the minimizing, they walk through and they're like, wow, this house looks completely different.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Well, I know you also talked about, when you come in, you will do the primary bath and the main, but, so is it, with the seller, do you normally just do just one room, just the primary, do you do the main floor?
We typically will do the entire living area, kind of on the
Okay.
main level when you walk in, because we
Okay.
know that it takes a buyer about 8 seconds to decide, yes, I like this, or no,
Just
I don't
8
like this.
seconds
So
is
let's
all
hit
you
them hard.
need.
Yeah.
Okay,
Make the
gotcha.
best first
Big
impression.
impact when they first walk in the door.
And people care about the primary bedroom, but once they get to a secondary bedroom, they kind of know it's another bedroom. But when they walk in, we want to hit them. We want the wow factor.
Right.
Okay. Because I remember one of the houses you staged for us, you even did the front porch. You brought in a couple of cute little things for the front porch, and so they're feeling that.
We want to
that
invite you
homey
in.
feeling, exactly, before they even walk in. That's great.
You welcome them.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yep.
Can you give us an example of some things that you've done where you've really seen a difference? I think you were sharing with us that you had a neighbor, I think, somebody in your neighborhood, one house stage wouldn't
Yes.
in. That's the story of the two houses.
The tale of two houses.
Yes.
So there were 2 homes for sale in my neighborhood. One was directly across from me, one was directly behind me, and I reached out to both sellers and said, listen, I do this for a living, let me help you. And so, let me come alongside and give you some recommendations. And the one home backed up to woods and a beautiful pond, had an incredible layout. It had great bones, probably needed a little bit of updating. It could have, a fresh paint would have been lovely. But same with the other one. But the one behind me, it backed up to another home. It had tile in the living room. It was very chopped up, had a steep driveway, just not as appealing as the other home. But that home that was less appealing listened. They made all the recommendations, they minimized. I brought over a couple things to help with decor, some artwork, some greenery. And that house was on the market for 2 weeks and sold for $10,000 above asking. The other home, which was much more desirable location, desirable layout, sat for 3 months and they got less than the other home.
That's amazing. What a big
Yeah.
difference. Because
Yeah.
we're always about getting our clients the most that they can for
That's
their,
right.
we're all on the same page there. We want happy sellers. Right.
Well, you want to maximize your investment.
Absolutely.
So you can invest a little and get a return on your investment.
So
by
it's
doing
well
just a few
worth
things.
spending a couple, $2,000 or $3,000 in
It
that
is.
sense to get
Well, and
that
we
back.
always say it's going to be way less to stage than it is to price reduce.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Very good.
Do you think a house does a seller need to completely move out in order for you to stage? I know you'll do the
I don't think
partial.
so. Yeah,
but
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
it kind of depends on, some people will want to be moved into their new home and they said, we're going to go ahead and get out. But we can certainly work with anyone who wants to be occupied.
Okay.
So Kristin, I think we touched on this a little bit in another question, but we frequently are asked by our sellers, why should I bother? The market's so good, my house is going to sell whether I do this or not. We tend to disagree. We know it will sell, but we know it won't sell for as much.
Correct.
And so, and you mentioned the property that in your neighborhood that had that experience and all of that. But
We typically find, when we stay in touch with our agents, we typically find that things that are staged are going for above asking.
Well, I think in a lot of ways, things are going at asking price or more anyway. But it does. I've seen. I know that we both, when a house has been staged, it goes for even
Higher.
more. There's times in the market lately where you had just assumed that the house is. You're not going to get it for less than a buyer's not going to get it for less than asking. So it's how much more over the asking are you going to get?
I was going to say,
sometimes.
no matter what market we're in, staging is going to help it sell faster and for more money.
well, and you also address the fact that sometimes you can overcome by staging. Not that you're hiding something that's bad, but maybe minimizing a feature in the home that may not be as
That's nice.
ideal or perfect as somebody might want, but by staging it appropriately, so buyers can see how they could live with that, that will eliminate that negative and that
Right.
that discussion.
I'm sure you've seen that.
We have. So we are always brought in to best showcase the home, and sometimes best showcasing is, we call it lipstick in the pig. So there are quirky spots that maybe someone doesn't know what to do with, or a home I staged recently had 17 steps to the front door. So we were worried that people would climb those 17 steps and be like, wow, I don't know if I, whatever, I don't know if I want this now. But then they walked in and it was perfectly staged. And we want to take away from the fact that they just climbed those 17 steps. So sometimes,
Way to get your steps.
yep, that
Exactly.
is. You get your steps. Things that are staged.
So Kristin, what would be your top recommendations for a home seller to prepare their home to sell?
So I would say typically when we do a consult, some of the top recommendations that we will make will be paint, updating lighting, and usually kind of curb appeal, landscape. Those are generally our top three, and minimizing.
Minimizing.
And that's, I think, why it's important to bring us in early, because when you're getting ready to sell your home, there's a lot you're going to have to do. So if we come in early and we make recommendation to paint, to minimize, you may want to go get a storage unit. You may take 2 weeks to get a painter. So we come in early, probably like 3 weeks to a month before you should kind of go live.
The other thing I like about what you all do is you give people paint choices. I've had people before do all that before they even call us. They paint the house, they do all this
Yes.
stuff, and then you walk in, you think, oh my gosh,
That's not what I
that's
would
not the color we would have recommended, or I wouldn't have done every room a different color, things
Right,
like that.
right.
So starting early with the stager makes so much sense.
Right.
And you can start months in advance with the stager, because sometimes it
Absolutely.
takes that long to get everything together. And then when you say minimizing, what are we talking about? Minimizing.
So we like to keep walkways clear. So sometimes people will have just too much furniture in a room,
Right.
or too much on their counters, or
Right.
whatever. So we'll just say, let's go ahead and put these pieces in storage, and let's completely clear off our counters. Maybe you can leave this cutting board, this oil. We'll kind of tell them what they can leave if they have the things, or we can bring the things in if it's a partial.
Okay.
So a lot of times when sellers are selling their home, they've already planned to where they're going, or and they may not have the cash flow or they're spending on other things. How does that work as far as payment? Do they have to pay for it up front, or
So
what do you think?
typically we'll kind of reach out to them and find out kind of what's convenient for them. We have started allowing payment at closing.
Oh, that's big.
Simply because if they're going to hire a painter and they're going to buy new lights and hire an electrician and they're going to bring in landscaping, or they're going to mulch it themselves and they're going to buy 100 bags of mulch and
Sure.
plant, they may be out of money by the time and people still want to stage. They think we've
Right.
done so much, now we want to show off what we've done. So we do allow payment at closing.
Oh,
That's great.
super.
That's really great, yeah.
Well, one thing I'm thinking of too, we were talking about minimizing. What about all the family photos? People are always, well, do you think that's too many photos? That's one question. It seems like we always get.
And it hurts to put all that
It
away.
does.
So they have to just
It
remember,
does.
it's not their home. Once they decide to sell, it's no longer your house.
You've got
It's
to
someone
take
else's
it as-
home. So you put all those wonderful memories away, and then you have Kristin set it all up beautifully, stage it, and
Making it a
and
little
you're
more
ready to
neutral.
go.
Yeah,
Be
we
very
neutralize.
neutral. Mhm. Yeah.
We call it depersonalizing.
Right.
Depersonalizing.
Right.
That's a good word.
Yeah.
So a topic that comes up a lot of times, whether it's talking to other realtors or talking to clients, is virtual staging. Not everybody's heard of that, but sometimes you can, right? I totally agree. you know, and for those that don't know, virtual staging is where they take the picture and then they come in and, I don't know, somehow put furniture in the room. So that when you're looking at the picture in the MLS or online and Zillow, whatever,
It looks furnished.
It looks furnished. But when you walk in the house,
Wah, wah.
right?
It's a letdown.
Yeah.
You're not getting that first 8 seconds of the best impression.
Right.
Yeah. I will say it's come a long way. It used to look
It has.
so fake. It definitely looks better than it used
does,
to,
it
but
does.
nothing can beat the real thing.
Nothing can beat it, and people buy with their emotions, and so
Yes.
you want them to walk in the home and fall in love, like she
Absolutely.
said, within the first 8
And
seconds.
it just gives a house a more warm feeling when you're actually physically walking in. If somebody's buying online and they're not even bothering to, which that has happened, you know, some people do that, but when you walk into that house and it's, a lot of people feel like, okay, this is my home, they have a feeling about it.
That's
And-
right.
We
That's
want
right.
them to just be able to picture their life there.
Yes, I agree.
Well, sometimes a home, people live in their homes a long, long time, 40, 50, 60 years. It's kind of surprising. And during that time, they might have done some updates here and there, kept things in good shape, but never really redid the kitchen to modernize the kitchen or redid the master bath or whatever. So do you help people with that as well if they need it? And, do you help people
We do. We do.
make that
So
decision and help them price it out and find out the thing that's going to be the most
we do.
cost effective? Yeah.
I think typically, kind of what you were saying, kitchens, bathrooms, sometimes closets matter to people.
Right.
So I think that we can make the recommendations, not just for paint, but we can say, this is the tile you should use in here, or these are the colors you should use in here. We can recommend places they can go. We can recommend contractors. So we can kind of help manage that a little bit.
And help them pick things so they pick the right things so that it all ties together. Right, because renovations can be quite pricey, but
And daunting.
and daunting,
Yes, yes.
and they take a lot of time. But sometimes you can't get around, if something is in such bad repair that you can't price the home appropriately with a bathroom.
Or if you're a year out, if you're,
Exactly, you have
if you're
time.
looking at a year later, you're planning to sell, and you've got the time and the budget to be
Right.
able to, and recognize that kitchen is just, might be cute and retro because it's 1950s, but it might be nice to have a sparkling new kitchen.
Right.
And it will add to the value, I think,
Oh,
that you
definitely.
absolutely will
Yes,
see it
kitchens definitely
return.
sell. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bring us in early.
We will. We will advise people to do that, definitely. The sooner the better. Right. Well, thank you very much for
Thank you.
joining us today, for
Yeah, thanks for having us.
sharing your expertise and making this daunting task seem very simple. I just have to call
Just have to call in the professionals.
Call the
and-
professionals,
yes.
right, right. And then it'll all be really easy. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Kristen.
Yeah.
So we're really glad that you joined us today with Coffee Talk with Classy and Sassy. And we hope that you learned something from Kristen and with her staging experience. And we're so glad you came in.